Welcome back to Parallel Rosters, the series where we propose alternative rosters for the franchises present in the Super Smash Bros. Games. This time, we will be looking at the Pikmin franchise. To create a roster with the Pikmin franchise, there are very few options when it comes to characters. So this time, there will only be 8 characters in the roster instead of the usual 9. The first character is obviously going to be Olimar, and I think he should keep his Brawl moveset, which means he would be able to control 6 Pikmin and he would not have access to the pink Pikmin. The second character would be Alf, the captain from the planet Kopai. He would no longer be a costume, instead working as a semi-clone in a similar way to Ness and Lucas or Villager and Isabelle, meaning that they share a lot of similarities and some of their moves are the same, or almost the same, but they are still distinct characters. He would have 3 Pikmin, like in Smash 4 and Ultimate. Olimar being the only one able to control 6 Pikmin would represent the fact that he was the first to discover them, and that he is the one who has the most experience and synergy with them. Alf would not be able to use white Pikmin, because they were not present in the story of Pikmin 3. For similar reasons, he shouldn't be able to use purple Pikmin, but instead rock Pikmin. For his up B, he could have the Pikmin build a bridge. Alf being an engineer of the SS Drake, it would make sense for him to direct the Pikmin to build a bridge. This would represent the Pikmin's ability to build constructions, something that isn't represented in Smash as of yet. The more Pikmin work on the bridge, the further Alf will be able to go. This would emphasize the fact that the Pikmin can't get anything done without teamwork, because 1 or 2 Pikmin would not be able to do a great job building the bridge. The rest of his moveset would be the same as Olimar in Smash 4 and Ultimate. You probably noticed how I left the pink Pikmin out of Alf and Olimar's moveset. I have a good reason for that. It's because I wanted to make a moveset with only pink Pikmin, and it would go perfectly, in my opinion, with Brittany, one of the Kopai captains from Pikmin 3. I chose to give Brittany the pink Pikmin because they have the same color scheme, but also because these Pikmin are similar to bees, an insect that is useful for pollination, something that Brittany would probably like because she is a botanist. She could control the pink Pikmin like a swarm of insects, mimicking the Scornet Maestro boss in Pikmin 3. For the up B, she wouldn't be weighed down by other Pikmin who can't fly, so it would be a better version of Ultimate's up B. She could also have a move that would let her drink one of the nutritious fruit juice from Pikmin 3. It could be used to heal or maybe give random boosts. The next character is going to be Charlie, the 3rd captain of Pikmin 3. I think he should only have yellow Pikmin. At the beginning of Pikmin 3, he gets a small squad of yellow Pikmin. This moveset could be a reference to that. Of the original 3 Pikmin, the yellows are by far the most versatile because of their high jump and their ability to use bombs. He would permanently have 4 yellow Pikmin that can't die. There would be electric properties on most of his attacks. His side B would be the same as Olimar, but they would not be able to latch on, and they would only do 1 quick electric attack. For his neutral B, one of the Pikmin would dig up a bomb rock and give it to Charlie. The bomb rock would function as an item like Peach's turnips. For his down B, the Pikmin would form a circle around him while holding each other's hands, like we see in Pikmin 3 when they conduct electricity. It would create an electric field around Charlie that would damage opponents and block projectiles, but he would not be able to move during this attack. For the up B, the Pikmin could throw a bomb under them that would explode and send Charlie upwards. Now that we are done with the Pikmin 3 captains, let's go back to the previous game with Louis. Louis, the original player 2 from Pikmin 2, can do literally everything Olimar can, So the logical conclusion would be to make him an echo of Olimar, right? Well, from a realistic point of view, yes, but in parallel rosters, we don't necessarily go with the most obvious option. Instead, I think it would be way more interesting if Louis was represented as a villain. Most people are probably scratching their heads right now, but hopefully the Pikmin fans already know what I'm talking about. In Pikmin 2 and Pikmin 3, there are a lot of instances where Louis does really fishy things that put others in danger. But what is most important for this video is the true final boss of Pikmin 2, the Titan Weevil, a powerful variant of the various weevils we see lurking in caves of the game. At first, it seems like the Titan Weevil is holding Louis hostage, but if we take into consideration the suspicious behaviors he displays in the two games he is a part of, and the fact that he has a strong affinity with bugs, he even calls himself the king of the bugs, it then becomes possible that all along it was Louis who was controlling the Dweevil. And from what we saw at the end of Pikmin 3, there is serious potential for Louis to show his true colors in Pikmin 4. This is just a theory though, so don't take it too seriously. In Smash, Louis would ride the Titan Weevil into battle, and the Dweevil would use the many weapons it can carry in Pikmin 2. The Flare Cannon, the Shock Therapist, the Monster Pump, and the Comedy Bomb. It would also be able to use the attacks of the other Dweevils in the games, like blowing himself up with a bomb rock. Next, we have the President from Pikmin 2. You might ask me how a moveset based on the President would be different than Olimar's moveset, since he is a replacement for Louis in Pikmin 2, and unlike Louis, he doesn't have any other moveset potential. I think it would be really fitting if he had a moveset based on the upgrades in the exploration kit that you get with certain treasures in Pikmin 2. It would make sense because he is the one who is initially after the treasure, and he sends Olimar and Louis to go retrieve it for him. Not giving him Pikmin would be a good way to differentiate him from all the other captains. His moveset would primarily be based on punching, because he would have the Rocket Fist obtained with the Brute Knuckle treasure. The Rush Boots would let him charge. Some of his moves could have super armor because of the Metal Suit Z. He could have some fire and electric based attacks because the Scorch Guard and Anti-Electrifier can protect from those attacks, and we can see that in Smash, some Pikmin gain elemental attacks based on the resistance they have in Pikmin games, like the Red Pikmin and White Pikmin. He could have the same down B as Olimar, but it would have a greater range because of the Mega Tweeter, and instead of doing what it does for Olimar, it would hurt enemies and send them upwards. It would be based on the upgrade you get from the Pluckophone that allows you to dig up Pikmin without having to do it manually. He could also use the sprays, the Ultra Bitter Spray to stun enemies and the Ultra Spicy Spray to temporarily boost his attack power. I know the Spicy Spray is normally reserved to Pikmin, but we can make an exception in Smash. Well, now that we've run out of playable characters, the only logical way to move forward in this video are with bosses and enemies. First, with the Bulbmin. Even though they are basically Pikmin, they still represent the other members of the wider family of Grub Dogs. The Bulborb especially is really iconic in the Pikmin franchise because they are really common and come in many variations, which is usually the sign of a great enemy mascot. It is also part of the Pikmin stage in Smash, so most people watching this video will already be familiar with this creature. But the fighter I proposed is not a Bulborb, but a Bulbmin, which is a parasitic Pikmin that uses Bulborb as a host. In Pikmin 2, they can be found in caves, and the adult one is followed by many juvenile Bulbmins. And similarly to the captains, he would be able to command juveniles to attack with him. But unlike the other captains, the adult Bulbmin would be the primary attacker and the juveniles would mimic him. similar to the secondary Ice Climber. But unlike Ice Climbers, juveniles would have a lower attack power and would die easily. He would primarily attack by biting, but he would also use his tongue like the Emperor Bulblax and the Whip Tongue Bulborb. For his down air, he could slam the ground with his body like Emperor Bulblax, maybe a fire attack to reference the Fiery Bulblax, a roll attack to reference the Empress Bulblax, and other moves from the rest of the Grubdog family. Spotty Bulbears can revive themselves, so to reference that, maybe one of its special moves would allow him to recover percents while leaving himself wide open for attacks. For the final character in this roster, I have the Plasm Wraith, the final boss of Pikmin 3, and potentially the main enemy of all 3 Pikmin games. Go watch the Pikmin Umibozu theory on YouTube if you're confused by what I just said. Knowing that he is most likely gonna be back in Pikmin 4, it is really easy to see that he is the main antagonist of the Pikmin series, and main antagonists of Nintendo games usually find a way inside of Super Smash Bros., but only if there is enough space for many characters in that series, which currently isn't the case with Pikmin sadly. But who knows, maybe in the future, Pikmin is finally going to get the recognition it deserves. For his gimmicks, he could change between his 2 forms. His main form would be the humanoid form, where he would have multiple jumps, and he could also transform into the mysterious life form. His attacks would be weaker, but he would also be more mobile on the ground, but slower in the air. He could also lose more plasm the more he gets hit, making him weaker, but at the same time he would be able to reabsorb the plasm that gets dropped on the ground, and maybe as the fight goes on, more plasm could get dropped like items. For its attack, it would have the fire, water, electric, and crystal elemental plasms, and he would also be able to use stabbing attacks. It would be interesting to see how a fluid character would play in Smash. It would probably have a dash animation similar to Inkling, and a crouch that is almost on ground level. For his final smash, he would absorb a lot of plasm and become gigantic. The final roster is Olimar, Alf, Brittany, Charlie, Louie, President, Bulbmin, and Plasm Wraith. For a 9th character, I thought about other enemies and monsters that could have worked as a character, like the Wollywogs or the Burrowing Snagret, because they are iconic to Pikmin players, but ultimately they didn't have enough moveset potential. Another one that I heavily considered was the BD Long Leg. I wanted to give him a moveset that would be based on the wider Arachnorb family, but after thinking about it, I decided against it because what makes him intimidating is his monstrous height. If we were to keep him on the same scale as Olimar, he would be too big to fit in Smash. But if we sized him down, he would lose his appeal as a monster, unlike Ridley. In conclusion, even if at first I thought that our roster based on the Pikmin series would be boring, I still ended up really liking making this video because it turns out that there is a lot that can be done with each character from the series. I also think that the Pikmin franchise as a whole has a lot of untapped potential that I would love to see realized in the upcoming Pikmin 4 release, if it ever comes out one day. Thanks for watching, and until next time.